EA has confirmed it will be showing off The Sims 4 at this year's E3. With so little gameplay revealed to date, we're intrigued to see the improvements that EA's made to the franchise. Will our Sims be more emotional? Will we finally get a decent multiplayer? Whatever comes, we can't wait to start playing God with more interesting versions of ourselves. Goat Simulator is great, but goats are sociable animals and we feel like it's here that the realism is shattered. But fear not, developer Coffee Stain Studios has announced that an update is coming in May which will bring goat parkour and split-screen multiplayer for up to 4 players. Just remember guys, make sure you've got enough RAM to run it, yeah? Nintendo has announced 3 new Mario Kart 8 Wii U bundles for Europe. The premium pack will come with a black 32GB console and a copy of the game, while you'll also have the choice of a red Mario bundle or a green Luigi bundle, depending on your preference of Italian brother. Both of those cost more but come packed with a bunch of Mario Kart themed goodies.
So, hello and welcome to this, which is the last of our gaming spotlights. It's a sad time, Hugh.
It is. It's the end of an era, but the beginning of a possibly more exciting era, which we're not going to say anything now. You have to watch to the end of the show to find out what's coming next. But so this week we're talking about handhelds mostly, but I think it's a good week to do it because the Game Boy has now turned 25 years old, which makes me feel old, and I'm not even that old. But the fact that the Game Boy.
How old were you when the Game Boy came out, Hugh?
I'd have been 1.
1 year old.
1 year old. I didn't have one then, but like, I mean, I remember getting the first Game Boy, and it was great. You know, being able to play games as I moved around my house was such a novelty for me. To be able to take it in the car and play on journeys and stuff. It was probably one of the. It probably still is my standout gaming moment in my life, I think. Getting that first Game Boy in Super Mario Land, and I just loved it. I mean, did you own the first Game Boy?
I did, and I was actually old enough to buy it at launch, so or relatively soon after launch, because obviously I think I was 9 when it came out. So
yeah,
it's a wonderful piece of gaming kit, and changed the way I think that gaming was viewed. I almost think it was the first of the mainstream consoles in some ways. It was the thing that everyone had,
yeah.
Boy, girl. It split through all of those kind of gender things that have been existent, and it just came out and said, you know, I mean, who doesn't know the theme tune to Tetris? I mean, that alone is sort of an indication of how popular Game Boys were.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about the Game Boy as well is Nintendo did a good job of the further iterations. So the Game Boy Pocket felt, you know, like the perfect next step, and then we had the colour. I mean, I remember getting the car and thinking, wow, gaming in colour. You know, this is the future. Obviously, I had the PlayStation, so I'd already experienced gaming in colour. But gaming in colour in my hands, that was amazing, you know. And I just, you know, I think Nintendo had a very good strategy with their iterations, and then we moved to the Game Boy Advance. I mean, I actually owned all of them, I'm not ashamed to say, and, you know, I loved every single one of them.
Obviously, handhelds are something that potentially we might not see too many of in the future. I mean, obviously, the DS has been immensely popular for Nintendo. It'd be really interesting to see if they do it again, but maybe the phone has killed off handheld gaming. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is the big debate at the moment. I think you're right. I think the dedicated portable handheld as we know it, you know, the current ones we're seeing now, we probably might be the last. I think Nintendo's shown that it still can do the handheld best without having the most power. You compare it to the PS Vita. The Vita's obviously more powerful, but there's something about Nintendo that's always had the way with handhelds. I think you're right. I think, you know, obviously the smartphone is the biggest threat to handheld gaming, but at the same time, there's a huge quality difference that still exists, I think, and it's changing a bit. I mean, we are seeing better games on smartphones, higher quality games, you know, bigger games, but I still think right now that, you know, the best handheld experiences are still happening on the dedicated consoles, such as the 3DS.
I think you've got a really good point. I mean, you can see from all the peripherals that are coming out for iPhone and for Android phones, the gaming peripherals, they're just not good enough yet, and it doesn't make it a handheld game, but people are really desperate to get that gaming handheld. I think one of the big issues actually for handheld gaming has been the lack of competition, because the Vita has never really taken off in the way that Sony would have hoped it would. I mean, obviously the PSP was a bit of a flop as well. At least Sony have tried. I mean, everyone else has sort of given up the ghost and just let Nintendo have a free run, but I think that lack of competition has been one of the big issues of handhelds. And I mean, if I'm honest, I've rarely use a handheld gaming system now. I do tend to use my phone. It's always with me. It's always charged. I don't have to think about it. The game's easy. I know you have a bit of a bee in your bonnet about micropayments and things like that, but for me, it's a natural evolution. And I don't know if, unless it was pretty awesome, if I would buy another handheld again.
I think, I mean, I have the 3DS and the Vita, and actually it's interesting to start to see at the moment what's happening with the Vita is Sony's turned it into a kind of retrospective port console. It's putting all its old PS1 games on, and I actually think maybe that's what it's perfect for. And also for indie gaming. Indie gaming, you know, has a real home on consoles like the Vita and the 3DS as well. And, you know, smartphones as well, but there are less, I'm seeing less games on the smartphones that really blow my mind. I mean, like, I was singing praises in Week in Gaming a couple of weeks ago about Monument Valley, which I think is an amazing, you know, complete mind mess up game, just this puzzler. It's really, really good. I mean, £3 a mobile. But very rarely am I getting those sorts of experiences. Well, if I turn to the Vita, they're on there, but the problem is obviously the price point. Everyone has a smartphone, but people aren't going to go out and then buy a Vita as well for 180 quid. You know, and it's another thing to carry around with them. Like you said, having a smartphone on you, getting out on the train is the easier thing to do. But yeah, I think, you know, I just think there are just less of those good experiences at the moment. But I do think that's going to start to change.
And I think there's something to be said for price points full stop around handhelds. I mean, if you buy one of the new phones, you can actually get a phone that's as powerful as a handheld. And the only difference is the physical buttons. So presumably, if someone nails one of these peripherals, I'm not sure how or when, but they always tend to feel a bit wrong at the moment. But if someone nails those peripherals, maybe Sony, then why would you buy a handheld gaming system? Because if it's just the games, then all it is another price point on an app store, and that makes sense. If you were paying, I think the days of the £40 mobile game are limited. Let's be honest. I think the reality is that you will buy a game for 7-8 quid maybe, and then you will be paying for maps and for additional stuff. I think for me, that's almost where the additional content model makes more sense.
Do you know what really annoys me at the moment? QuickTime events. Just give me a cutscene. I don't want to have to like press X to win in the middle of the cutscene. Ninja Blade, Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6. So many boss fights have been watered down and ruined. Let me play the game or let me watch the cutscene. Make your mind up. Bashing buttons isn't fun. Uncharted Golden Abyss on the Vita. The final boss fight was just 5 minutes. Swiping in various directions. I was like, just give me the cutscene if you're going to give me the cutscene. I'll just sit there and watch it, okay? I don't want to interact with it. Fuck off. So, hypothetical scenario. The 3DS is the final Nintendo handheld. That's it. But Nintendo still wants something in the mobile market. What do we think they do? I mean, people have talked about a Nintendo smartphone. Some actually quite seriously. There were rumors at one point that Nintendo was thinking about doing a phone and an Android tablet. Could that be the answer?
I think it's unlikely for a good few years, let's be honest. But if the handheld dies, the Wii U hasn't performed well, Nintendo have had a tough few years, where do they go next? I mean, they're going to have to make a decision at some point. Do they become a third-party software company, and do they just roll Mario et al. Across all of this stuff? Do they start doing Android versions of Super Mario Brothers? Do they just throw their weight in on one lot or the other? Do they say, right, we're Apple, we're going to go with Apple? Do they go with Sony and just become exclusive to Sony phones because of the Japanese connection? Seems unlikely, let's be honest. But they're going to have to do something. I mean, yes, the phones. I mean, we've got some lovely renders of the phone which are really interesting, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely because who would you buy a Nintendo phone?
Well, as much as I say I wouldn't like to see a Nintendo phone, I'd rather see that than, like you said, Nintendo putting their titles on other devices like the iPhone and Android.
Why?
Because I feel like it matters when you've got a heritage like Nintendo, and I feel like they've kept their stuff exclusive to their own platforms for this long. I feel like part of Nintendo would die at that point.
I think you're right, but maybe all of Nintendo would die if they don't. So I mean, that's the contention, isn't it? How about a Nintendo version of a phone? So you get the new Sony Xperia Z2,
and it comes in
the Z20, let's say, Nintendo version that comes with all of the classics.
Preloaded Mario 64 and all that stuff.
That would be a tempter, wouldn't it?
It would be a tempter.
See,
if
look,
it had decent controls. This is the thing. It's the control system. I can't imagine playing Nintendo games on a touchscreen. I'd need some decent peripheral, and no one seems to have nailed the peripheral yet.
But if maybe that's the next Nintendo thing.
So maybe they come, with the
they do
3DS
the most amazing kind of like peripheral thing that comes with a slot that you can, comes preloaded with their 20 games that works with both Apple and Android. I think I'd be tempted. I think have we just solved things for Nintendo again? Second week in a row.
You're welcome, Nintendo.
So outside of Nintendo, there's obviously other companies that could potentially do a handheld, as much as we think it's probably unlikely that there's going to be a next generation of handhelds. I mean, the obvious ones are, you know, the big players at the moment. Will Sony do a Vita Plus? Will Microsoft roll out an Xbox handheld? Unlikely for both, let's be honest. But how about some of the new players? How about Apple and Amazon? They're getting more involved in gaming. They're sort of scuffling around the edges of gaming without really chipping in. What's to say there?
I mean, Amazon obviously with Fire TV, they're interested in gaming. They're snapping up gaming studios. That's the most interesting thing here. They're actively doing game development themselves. They're not just taking it from other people. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe, we've got the Kindle, but maybe there's something else. Maybe there is something dedicated, or maybe the next Kindle will have some kind of other gaming element. Again, maybe some kind of peripheral in the box that comes with it, or optional thing like they've done with the gamepad for Fire TV. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Amazon's clearly showing more interest there. It's interesting you mentioned Microsoft actually, because I think Microsoft's one that everyone keeps expecting them to do it, and
they're not going to do it. They've already pretty much said.
Yeah,
that,
they have, but like again, it seems odd that they never did. Even with the first Xbox, they didn't do an Xbox handheld. It would have been massive, but it's interesting that they've kind of held back on that, and they've seen like maybe something like Smart Glass as the better avenue, even though that hasn't really taken off. So, yeah, I think Microsoft's an interesting one, but I think you're right. They're less likely than someone like Amazon. The interesting one is Apple as well, because Apple already kind of has the console. It has all the games in the App Store, and I feel like it doesn't feel like it needs to develop any further. Like, it has the Game Center, which feels like a kind of, half attempt at doing something, but it doesn't need to, because, people, it is a console in itself.
I kind of feel like Apple are treading water a little bit. I think they probably do have plans, but I think they're probably waiting to see what other people do before they wade into the market. Apple as a business, quite sensibly, tend to just wait a little bit and then see if they can do it better, rather than coming in hot. I mean, something like the MP3 player. I mean, when they came in hard, and they came in and they won. But they weren't the first.
No,
I mean, they were looking at what Creative were doing and some of the other companies, and then they came in and did the iPod and whoosh, massive for the company. So I think they're probably, with gaming, I don't think that they're blind to it. I think they're probably just treading water and waiting to see how things shake down, and then they'll probably make more of a decision. I could be wrong. It could be one more thing in the next Apple conference, and they're going to have an Apple TV gaming hybrid that everyone wants.
I think it's because they're in a safe position with gaming in a lot of ways. I don't feel they feel as much pressure as they do maybe in areas like wearables. But Apple TV as well, there's a nice parallel with Amazon too, because Apple TV again is right for gaming, and perhaps even more so because maybe we'd use our iPhone as a controller or the iPad. So I feel like it's almost like, again, like you said, software. It's almost like click the fingers, change the software, and actually we've got an Apple console there already. It's been sitting there the whole time, and our controllers have been sitting in our pocket the whole time. Well, that's the end of another Gaming Spotlight, and that's the end of the Gaming Spotlight show, full stop, Patrick.
Yeah, well, it was a difficult decision. We've enjoyed doing it. But what we're doing is something pretty awesome, I hope. In a couple of weeks' time, you're going to see the first of a new show, the TechRadar show. We'll still be talking about gaming, so if you love your gaming stuff, we'll probably still have a Pikachu featuring once in a while.
Maybe a cheeky Seats of Rage as well.
Perhaps. But we'll be bringing all the best bits of Gaming Spotlight, and maybe Hugh, into the TechRadar show, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully we should have a spoiler to follow.